You're listening to your host and psychotherapist, Rhonda Spaziani, on Spaz on Mental Health on greeninkradio.com.
Are you listening? He just repeated the words that came out of her mouth. Now they're listening.
Hi, this is Rhonda. I had the great honor of being on Kate Bowers Wallinga's podcast, Ignorance Was Bliss, for episode 70, Schrodinger's Rapist. It was a really hard conversation because it's about rape. And I have to admit, I was the angry one. Kate was the more centered, tempered one. As a therapist, I see how people's lives are shredded by this violation and violence and trauma. So I'm a little pissed off, admittedly. But we have to continue to have the conversation because we're changing the world one conversation at a time. So listen in. It's not an easy listen, but hopefully it'll help somebody. Someone will reach out to get help, or it will enhance your understanding of what it's all about to be a woman in this world with the acts of violence and violation against them, and how they experience it, and how our system is currently pretty broken, but how it's in the process of healing, thanks to many people. And thank you for listening.
This podcast involves topics such as violence, sex, and mental illness. If this may disturb you or those around you, please reconsider. If you ever feel unsafe or suicidal, please call your local crisis centre, emergency services, or your National Suicide Hotline. In the US, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 800-273-8255. You matter.
Hey, this is Kate. I don't exactly know how to introduce an episode about rape because it's bad. There's no way to soften it or ease in or tell a lighthearted story or otherwise ask a rhetorical question. I mean, it's not a rhetorical experience. It is invasive and painful and terrifying, and then victims are shamed, survivors are questioned. It's just shitty. I mean, so I don't know. But it needs to be talked about, and it needs to continue to be talked about until it is no longer shameful. Because I don't think we can get rid of the pain, and I don't think we can get rid of scared, but we can get rid of shame, because shame is a goddamn waste of neurons. It's just calories that don't need to be burned, you know? So with that in mind, I'm not going to go nuts on intro. I'm just going to tell you that I was joined by somebody who can take a much more empathic, therapist-y sort of view than I can, and also can get just as pissed off, and maybe more so. So Rhonda was this fantastic interview to talk about the concept of rape exams and evidence collection, and then the follow-up, because I think people don't understand the criminal justice system until they're in the middle of it, and I totally sympathize with that. I mean, when I get sick, I learn a lot about that ailment, but otherwise I try hard not to learn about things, because then I'm just gonna angst and worry over whether I have the things. So I think similar about criminal justice, like ignorance really is bliss, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I think it's important that we pull back the curtain and know a little bit more of the process so that we can maybe start to decrease the shame a little bit. Are you sure you really want to know? This is Ignorance Was Bliss.
name is Rhonda Spaziani, and I'm the host of Spaz on Wine Uncorked and Spaz on Health on greeninkradio.com. And I'm here on the show because Kate and I had a discussion, and it was very topical about the unprocessed rape kits. I had just watched I Am Evidence on HBO, and it was so gripping. Mariska Hargitay's wonderful, really compelling, horrifying documentary on the unprocessed rape kits. And so Kate and I were having a dialogue about me coming onto her show. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I see clients that are victims of trauma, sexual assault, and rape. And Kate and I started having a dialogue about that, and we thought that this would be a really unfortunately timely topic, especially in light of how the whole Kavanaugh hearings played out. So, hi, Kate.
Hi. I don't even like. I've started using the word Kavanaugh as like an expletive. It's just, it's bad. It's bad.
But yeah, having me on and having this conversation.
Thank you so much for coming to play. Absolutely. So, I think that you and I have an interesting overlap. Like, I've never been able to do therapy very well. I'm not patient enough, and so people get talking about their problems, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, just whatever, you should, whatever. And that's not good for a therapist. And so I'm much more on the other end of things. Like, I have been in the room for several rape kit collections.
Wow.
And so we can talk about that a little bit.
Intimately about the process then.
It's horrific.
Everything I've read and researched, it sounds, and with the whole documentary, it's really horrific, right? It's like 4 to 6 hours. It's very invasive and demoralizing and dehumanizing, and
well, it's all of those things. Very, I mean, in my experience, it was almost all the time the woman comes in alone because it's just happened. Whatever the assault has just happened, and there hasn't been time yet for family to come in. And I would get called in. I worked for a women's crisis center in New Hampshire and then in Massachusetts, and they need somebody in the room with them who is speaking up for them. Because that's not even that's not the time to decide whether it is a rape. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That's the time to collect the evidence. We'll figure out whether it was a rape later on.
Right.
And I mean, in New Hampshire anyway, they're called a sane nurse, which I love.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. And from what I understand and from what I've been reading, is that collections by these trained sane nurses end up, and with an advocate, that there ends up being much less PTSD, but also higher levels of conviction and prosecution, because the evidence is collected in such a better manner. Yeah.
And I was very fortunate to, even in New Hampshire, I was in the middle of nowhere, but they had sexual assault nurse examiner, sane nurses that would do but still, it's horrible. I mean, part of one of the first parts of the examination is that the woman needs to completely strip. They take all of her clothes, but they don't give her new ones yet. And you have to stand on a sort of like a sheet, but it's like the what is it, like the plastic pads that they put in the bed if they're afraid you're going to wet the bed.
Almost like a big huge puppy pad.
Yeah, exactly. They're like 3 feet on a side, and you have to stand on it naked. It's cold in the room because it's always cold in the ER, and they literally comb you from head to toe onto this pad that you're standing on, and you're not supposed to touch anything. Like, you can't cover yourself. You just have to stand there, and they'll comb your pubic hair. They will swab a lot of stuff while you're still standing there, and then they'll give you, certain, like, they'll give you a Johnny or similar or scrubs, but then they do swabs, and then they take blood samples and all of these things, and it's a very methodical. Like, a rape kit is a box. That they pull out, and they follow it step by step by step. And so it's well done. It's supposed to be done that way, but it's horrific.
It sounds horrific. And then, from what I understand, there's a lot of secondary traumatization that occurs if that part of it is handled in appropriately. And from what I understand, if it's not a sane nurse or medical practitioner that's trained in this kind of humanistic forensic medical procedure, that sometimes medical professionals are grilling the victim, which they don't have to in any way, shape, or form. They're not the ones doing the investigation. So from what I understand, that really can really blow the trauma and create secondary trauma way higher. Did you find that? Were you ever
have to
present?
have an advocate, so I was the advocate,
Yeah.
right? I was the non-medical person, and it was my job to, can I get you some water? Is the nurse going too fast? Does something hurt?
Yeah.
Can I hold your hand now that she's done literally combing it or swabbing it?
Yeah.
Can I get her a blanket? And then meanwhile, the cops are literally at the door because they want a statement right now, because they want to go find the guy,
Yeah.
or whatever. They need to have enough. But it's my job to stand between the cops and the person and say, she is not ready yet. And it's not a long wait, but it's a wait, and you have to wait too. And that's something that people have a hard time advocating for themselves when they've just been assaulted or whatever. And so there were some really bad days. Like, it was a heavy job to have, and it was a heavier experience for these women to go through.
Oh my goodness,
And
those poor things.
all you can do is hope. Like, I was here, I hope that I helped. And
I'm sure
how do you know? And
I mean, all the statistics say that when they have advocates, it's so much better for them. The trauma is so much less, the long-term trauma.
right. Well, I mean, that's a lot of things. If you can talk about it quickly, and if somebody's there to sort of validate and normalize your experience and say, like, look, what you just went through is shitty. We gotcha. Just having that feeling, I think helps, and that's something that I would want there if I was
And
in
it
that
helps mitigate
situation.
the whole shame situation, because women that get raped have this horrible feeling of shame, because it's such like an intimate, sex is such an intimate act, and then you've been so violated at such a intimate level, and it's supposed to be a loving, generous, and then you've been violated and assaulted, and it's violent and horrible. And then to have like the medical professionals or the police come in and start saying, like, what were you wearing? Did you have anything to drink? And start grilling them over and over to see if their story is consistent. It really kind of evokes this whole feeling of shame. And so to have someone there that's like holding your hand and normalizing it and there as a support system can really mitigate some of that shame.
And that's all you can do is hope, because I never got to see the follow-up. And that sounds like that's what you're talking about, is that you got to, like, it is a privilege, but it's not fun, but you got to see them later. So
I see them.
I had the first 6 hours, and then I'm done. Like, I never got any follow-up. I never got to know.
Oh, that's unfortunate to not know that your impact, but I see them much later as in a private practice, not in a community crisis center or anything. I see them after it's been quite a while, a lot of times, before they come to seek treatment, sometimes years. So I'm not there on the front end like you were.
Right. And so, what would bring somebody to end up in your room, in your office?
Well, they haven't really processed it. So there's often a gap where they've processed it a little bit with maybe a family member or a friend or whatever, but they haven't, or some of them have never processed it at all. Even, with any other living person. I have transgender clients that have been assaulted that will have never processed it with anyone. They've never reported it. They've never processed it. There's, so much shame around some of their behaviors and risky behaviors that sometimes they engage in because of self-esteem issues, and that they don't even ever process it, because then they feel like they're somehow responsible for being abused and assaulted. And so it can be a long time. It can be buried for a long time. And it's not really buried in that they're not emotionally accessing it, but because it's like flashbulb memories, of course. So it's really, they're remembering it a lot because a lot of them have PTSD, but they're not sharing it or normalizing it.
Right. And that's what you mean by processing it, is sort of being able to work it through, talk it through,
Yeah.
until you realize you're not crazy and you're not at fault.
Yeah, and to have there's a bunch of modalities you can use specifically of evidence-based modalities, but a lot of the times, um, just having an empathic human, non-judgmental human to like share in your journey of pain can be really validating and reduce a lot of the inherent shame that people feel, which they shouldn't. There's no reason. I mean, there is reasons because society, look at just what happened with the Kavanaugh hearing. Look what our president of the United States did to a woman that was obviously distraught and brave and courageous to talk about something that was an incredibly traumatic event, and then to have it turned on her and belittled. I mean, that's why most people don't report, because there's this whole attacking, shame-ridden kind of behavior that happens. And so to have someone in my role be able to validate, to go talk to another human being that isn't doing any of that, is really empowering for them, for the victims.
Yeah. Do you have any, what comes to mind if you think about your, like, sort of your best case? You're the one that you walked away from like, shit, yeah. You know what I mean?
Where like I really felt like no, I think it's not like woohoo, it's a win. It's just like the relief,
The power
the
of it. That's what I mean. Like that
yeah,
whole, wow.
the whole energy in the room with the person just shifts. The intense shame and trauma and horror just the knot just unloosens enough for them to breathe a little bit into it, and it can be transformative, really.
How long do you see people?
I'm a solution focused therapist, so I do have long-term clients because that's their choice, not mine. I'm like, fly, be free, and they're like, no. But it just is it's so individualistic about when someone feels like they've made it through, so it could be anywhere from a couple months, a couple sessions, to years.
Still, I love you because you're solution focused and you use the word empathic correctly. So we are besties now. It's good. Now,
Yeah. I just, what I'm trying to like really get my head around from a societal standpoint is I'm proud, just as you, as I'm honored and proud to be part of anyone's journey if I can help in even a little bit of a way. And I remember during the Kavanaugh hearings, my husband said to me, he was blown away, and he's a lefty like I am, and I'm going to put that right out there. I'm a total lefty. And he said he was blown away that the statistic came out that it was 1 in 3 women had been sexually assaulted in her lifetime. And I said, well, my personal experience with my girlfriends and myself and my clients, I think it's more like almost one-on-one. At some level, some woman's been, it's something assaultive or a violation has occurred in her sexual life. Do you think that's true? You think I'm cynical on that?
I am cynical about everything. So no, and that's what the fun for certain values of fun, the mix that you end up having is like this deep sort of empathy with people, but then also the flip side of that coin, it's not hopelessness, but it's a despair almost. Like,
Yeah.
I know what the need is and it's very clear and I can't quite reach it.
Yeah. I think it's far more prevalent. I think there's probably almost every female has had some type of violation of either been stalked or her privacy, or been forced into a kiss or something. I mean, it may not be a full-on rape, but it's some type of violations in the sexual area. Don't you think?
I don't think you need to involve a penis in order to be
Right.
impacted by one. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then someone was telling me the story about the college professor that asked the
men in the classroom, what do they do on a daily basis to avoid being raped? And there was like the regular jokes about, oh, not go to jail. And then and that went around for a while. And then they asked the young women, what do you do to avoid being raped? And they, itemized. I walk in pairs. I keep one of my earphones out. I don't run or walk at night. I don't park next to vans. I park under lights. And it was very illuminating to the young men. They were kind of blown away by it. And then they also asked, and the question was also posed, what would you do if men had to adhere to a 9 o'clock curfew, and they had to be in the house from 9 o'clock on, and they couldn't leave? And the women were like, well, I'd go running. I'd walk my dogs. I'd sit on my patio and have a glass of wine. So it's really interesting that we live in a world where we're prey in many ways. But
well, and as much, to me, what's fascinating about that is not just that, I mean, reflexively, like I drive a Subaru, and so it's a hatchback, and I reflexively walk around it, and I will even shine my light in it before I get in.
Right.
And that's the kind of, so those are the kinds of where it's not, first of all, it's reflexive. It's everywhere. It's constant. It's every day. I don't even think about it. I don't teach my daughters to worry that way, and yet I think that they will. On the other hand, I don't believe that the potential predators realize that they are potential predators.
That's interesting.
You know what I mean? Like, I think that a lot of times men don't realize that they are being perceived as threatening, and that you don't have to do a damn thing to be threatening to me.
Yeah.
Because I have been so socialized to find threat in everything that you have been assigned the role as predator. Sorry, dude, I'm not going to say hi.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
So it's a weird thing. It's like we are assigned the role of prey, they are assigned the role of predator, and neither of us have done a thing to deserve it.
No, but statistically, men are predators and women are prey.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, statistics, sociologically, that's how it is. And that's one of the things that's always interesting to me. Like, look, don't take this personally, but just by the numbers, sociologically, you are more likely to hurt me. That's just sort of how it rolls.
Yeah.
And so on a personal level, psychologically, I have to be wary of you, even if you've done nothing wrong. Like, sorry, dude.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We have to. I mean, because let's face it, you have to protect, you have to protect your drink. I can't tell you how many times I have heard about women, and not just young women, but older women that have been victims of their drinks being drugged in public places. And
I did.
You did?
Yeah, when I was in college. I was at a party, and this is in 1998, approximately 1,000 years ago. And, it was the red Solo cup kind of deal. And these were friends of mine. Like, I knew everybody there. And the next thing I knew, I'm waking up next to a couch upstairs. And luckily, I woke up sort of as the person was considering an assault.
Oh, thank God.
No, but nothing major happened. But that consciousness of, oh my God, I have to watch my drink even when I'm not in public, even when I'm around friends.
Yeah. Oh God.
It blew my mind. And so we have to watch our drinks. And that means we have to spend a lot more on alcohol, because if I have to go dancing or if I have to pee, I'm not bringing my drink.
No.
So I have to buy a new one.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had friends that were like, when I was younger, I'm in my 50s now, but when I was in my friend was in her 40s, she got drugged and assaulted. I had a family member there was an attempt. She got drugged, but fortunately people were around and were able to stay with her, and nothing happened, thank God. But I've had I've heard of, in my practice, young women that have been drugged and, been assaulted. So and what's interesting, if there's drugs and alcohol involved, the police get to determine what's considered a good rape or a bad rape, or so if drugs and alcohol are involved, a lot of time those rape kits won't even get processed because after they've gone through that whole humiliating process you talked about and how traumatized they've been, then those kits sit and they don't even, and somebody gets to determine if that kit is even going to get processed.
Yeah, is it worth it? Because
It's that,
she's
yeah.
going to get how
And
she
was
was
culpable.
drinking.
Yeah, she was partially culpable because she was drinking, and no, and alcohol now is not a form of consent. At least that's up. But they still, even the legal system gets to determine that they think that is a form of consent if you're intoxicated or you've been drugged. A lot of times those kits won't get processed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in many states, sometimes even jurisdictions, like so Massachusetts, it kind of changes from town to town, that they only the DA or police have to formally submit for a rape kit to be tested.
Wow.
So it's not automatic, and this is what the backlog is. And we don't even have numbers, but the estimate is in the hundreds of thousands where you do the rape kit no matter what. Like, and I want people to hear that if there's even a faint question of consent, you can't really remember saying yes, but you're pretty uncomfortable about it. Or if you said no, or if it was an outright rape, like it doesn't matter. And that is not the time to decide whether it was rape. Like you can think about that later.
Right.
After you shower for an hour and a half, that you get the evidence collected because you can never undo that.
Right.
If you say no to the evidence, you just, yeah.
And so now with Mariska Haggerty's group, with that and the backlog.com and her Joyful Heart Foundation and stuff, they're really putting it out there and they're really pushing, and legislation is changing.
Mm-hmm.
It is. So hopefully they are clearing out a lot of these backlog rape kits, and some of the states are being very aggressive about doing it. I think Detroit cleared out like almost 12,000 of them, and they were able to convict 821 rapists from those kits. Think
Which
about
is
that.
insane. And
It's
so,
over,
I mean,
hundreds and hundreds, like 400, over 400,000, because then they threw a bunch of them out, so they don't even know how many haven't been processed. I mean, that's like probably a super low estimate of how many of these kits have been not processed at all.
Right, exactly. That's because there's a lot of jurisdictions that don't have to keep track, and so that's what I'm saying.
They don't have to send them in any timely fashion, which is changing, and some of the states are changing that it has to happen like within 21 or 30 days. And then women, can't, in a lot of states, they can't find out what happened to their rape kit or where it is or what's going on.
Right, exactly. And so just get it collected, though, because that's the first.
Yes, that's a
step.
huge point. I'm glad you're making that point. Get it collected because it's changing. It is changing, and the more we scream and yell and pound our chest, the more it's going to change. So, and they can be collected and sit on shelves for years, but they can still link to previous crimes, ongoing crimes, serial. A lot of these perpetrators are serial rapists. The people that are putting drugs in girls' drinks, they're doing it more than once. They're doing it, maybe one night in this club, another night in another
It's a hobby.
club. Yeah. And so, I mean, and just rapists in general are the predators, and a lot of them are serial. They're finding that more and more of these rape cases are serial rape cases.
And even if it's just you, like just get it collected, because you can never go back and say, oh, I wish I had gotten it collected. Like that's you get one shot. So you get it collected and then think, because you can always later say, no, I guess it wasn't really a rape, or I'm not really sure, or in all honesty, having seen cases go through the system, if one of my children was sexually assaulted, I am not positive that I would press charges, which is horrific. Like, it's horrible to even say those words, but it's because I've seen how, you talk about secondary trauma. Like, I have seen how invasive and disrespectful and terrifying the justice system is.
It's so bad that, believe it or not, that women that don't prosecute end up with lower levels of PTSD than women that do.
Which, Jesus H. Christ. I mean,
Right?
let's sit with
Right?
that one for a second. Fuck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
There are not enough bad words on that one. It's just,
I
it's
know.
unreal that it is
That blows
healthy
me
or
away when
not
I was
to,
reading that. Yeah.
to report. Like,
Yeah. Well, the only way that mitigates that, if it's prosecuted and a woman feels like she's been vindicated and there's been a conviction, which is only 3% of the time.
that's a lot of ifs there,
Yeah.
because, and to be fair, like, I want any defendant to get a solid defense. I want the Constitution in place. I want a rigorous defense. I do. And so that means that sometimes, even when it's a legitimate lack of consent or unconsensual rape, it's still, if there's not proof, there's not proof. Like, there's nothing you can do. But getting the test is part of the proof. And then after that, like, I would have my kids go through a rape test if there's a question, but I'm not positive I would advance the case, but I would need time to think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really horrific. And hopefully it's changing. I mean, if you've seen some of like the police officers that were like interviewed about why they made the determinations not to, process it and stuff, and you're like, dude, you should not ever be making a decision for me about
Right.
that to be processed or not, or if that's what they considered a good rape was from a stranger with a weapon and with physical evidence of bruising and wounds, and that's when they probably will move forward.
So, I would like a rape with extra fuckery, please.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
yeah,
It's just,
yeah.
it's horrible. And so, you know, through that process, it's not great. But the backlog idea is, first of all, collect them and collect them well. Collect the evidence well. Yes, it's invasive, but it doesn't have to be. The
No.
sane nurses they volunteer for it. Like, it's an extra level of training. It's like professional development, and they want to do this. They are more sort of driven toward it and empathic. So, good
Yeah,
step.
that's
That
a great step.
get an advocate there. All you have to do is look at the nurse and say, "Can I have somebody here with me?" And then, even if they don't have a trained advocate, they can get like a nursing assistant
Hmm.
to stand with
Yeah,
you. Get
yeah,
somebody to stand with you, because they will. You don't have to deal with this alone. And then, so that's step one. Get the boxes collected, get the rape kits collected correctly, get them stored correctly. Then the backlog has to do with, first of all, we have to have the DA or the police submit it for DNA testing. And then
hmm
secondly, the labs actually have to do the testing.
hmm
And all
right.
that takes money. It takes a lot of cash. And so, given that, like, and the backlog is one of my favorite charities right now,
Hmm.
because they do excellent work that needs to be done. If nothing else, I wish they could do more statistical endeavors. Like,
Yeah,
I would like to know how
yeah.
many rape kits are sitting unprocessed, other than a fuck ton. I don't
Oh,
feel like that's a scientific enough word.
they've started it. I mean, there are some stats on some of the states. One of the couple of the ones that I noted was Texas. I know, shocker, was 20,000 unprocessed rape kits. Was this some of this? California was high up there too, which kind of surprised me. I thought they might be a little more progressive.
They just voted down an act.
They did.
Very, very recently, they voted down an act that would have processed more of the rape kits. So I'm unhappy with California.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, I was surprised about that it was California. I'm trying to find my little stats here. They're not quickly coming to sight, but yeah, it's pretty thousands upon thousands. But what I did learn is that for every dollar, so I know that it's an economic issue too. So some of these like really bankrupt cities and stuff are like, we can't afford to process them. But for every dollar that they spend, Lawrence Wine from the Journal of Forensic Sciences found that for every dollar that they spend, $3,000, it saves $3,000 from averted sex and other felonious crimes down the road. So it's well worth its return to process these kids. Because if you get habitual criminals or even first-time criminals off the road, out of the community, then you avert many, many more crimes happening. Because a lot of time rapists aren't just rapists. They're involved in other felonious crimes too, even homicide.
Right. And just you don't want people to think they're getting away with this shit.
Right. And that's the other thing, is that rapists have learned that they can get away with this shit. Look, Kavanaugh got away with this shit.
Yeah, right. You can rape somebody and end up on the Supreme Court. And so, yeah.
And then have the president of the United States heckle the poor victim.
I don't like it. Yeah. And so that's the thing, is that there's a lot to do. There's a lot of work to do, but what can I do? I can start by talking about it.
Right. And just having the dialogue about it. I mean, I was sharing some of these stats and stuff that I had found with people that I work with and stuff, and they're like, oh my God, they're just blown away. I mean, when you really start looking into it, it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing what the level of negligence nationally around this issue has occurred. And that these are people's lives that may have lifetime trauma associated with this, particularly because nothing's ever been done. Their rape kits are sitting there for 13, 15 years and it's just in a warehouse.
Yeah. Yeah, but enough public attention, that's where shame starts. And I don't want the individuals to be shamed. I want the police departments, I want the DAs, I want the states to be shamed into fix this. This is a fixable problem. It is, yes, it's expensive, but it's a fixable problem.
Well, the crime of allowing criminals to go on and on and on, perpetuate more and more crimes is even more expensive than processing and doing due diligence around this issue. And let me tell you, if it were men getting raped like this, at this level, at these numbers, there'd be a lot of laws enacted.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
I don't want to get on my whole, rampant misogyny in our country, but let's face it, there's rampant, and this is illustrative 100% of the rampant sexism and misogyny in our country that our current president's bringing. I know I'm getting political. I didn't mean to do that, but our current president, I think, is bringing in front and center on, in a really negative, backwards way. He's kind of highlighting what goes on in our country as far as how women are treated.
Yeah, it's heavily misogyny, and I think it is also just a case of we, as a country, have become extremely reactive and not proactive. Mm-hmm. So we would rather ignore that $3,000 that you can save down the road in potential prosecutions and that sort of thing, because we would rather not spend this dollar right now. I'm going to save this dollar because it's sort of in my hand, and I'm going to ignore that $3,000 down the road, because what if we can just ignore it? What if it goes away? Like, it'll just disappear. That'll be great.
And the other thing that makes it even kind of more upsetting is that,
because it's not yet. Let's make it worse, please. Right?
Well, it's just that, and the inequality and how the victims' cases are handled. So, a Caucasian, middle to upper middle class, not young women, because young women fall into the same inequality of treatment. But if it's a middle class, say 30-something and above woman, Caucasian, she'll get more of the prophylaxis medical treatments available. The prosecutions will be greater, and the rape kits will be processed at greater rates.
Be a well-off white woman with health insurance and with a knowledge of the system and a voice to use it.
And you'll get more wraparound services and be treated more respectfully. And your case will even be prosecuted at greater rates.
Yeah, if you could manage also to have children, that works really well too for the sympathy card.
Oh yeah, probably. I that didn't factor into my reading, but I'm sure it would. It just depends. It's certain geographical areas are better treated than others, as well as socioeconomic status, age, and race.
Well, here's a little trick. If you're in
Yeah.
New England, and let's say you get assaulted in New Hampshire, cross
Yeah.
the border to Massachusetts for your rape kit.
Oh yeah.
It will be collected better and processed. It'll be more likely processed because there's no more money for it in Massachusetts.
Good to know. I mean,
New Hampshire's all live free or die and shit. So New Hampshire
Yeah.
hangs on to a lot of stuff, whereas Massachusetts is a little more well off and a little more able to process it. And so,
maybe a little more progressive in some of these areas as well.
Oh, for
Maybe
sure.
a little less misogynistic than up north.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Massachusetts is so much the Medicaid system is so much more well established here. So even if you cross and you don't have insurance, you're better taken care of than in New Hampshire. So that's kind of disgusting. But just so you know, pro tip, which is awful, but it's a thing. And you know, there's I don't want to sound discouraging. You know, if you are a woman of color, if you are younger than 20, if you are older than 50 or so, you know, there are a lot of age brackets and socioeconomic status and race that get less attention, but the only way we're going to get more attention is to speak out.
Mm-hmm. And by how we vote.
Well, you know what? It's November 5th right now.
Yeah.
So tomorrow morning, I am
Yeah.
taking my 18-year-old to the polls for the first time.
Congratulations. How fun.
Yeah, it's important because that's it. That's the only voice I have. That's all I got. But also, you know, and I understand that this is probably a stupid thing to say on a podcast and fuck it, you know, whatever. But if you happen to be in Salem, Massachusetts, and you happen to be sexually assaulted, drop me a line. I'll come sit with you in the ER.
That's awesome.
You know
That's
what I mean?
awesome. Put that out there.
Because I would rather put that out there than say, yeah, look, good luck. And I do believe that I know the next town over has a good rape crisis center.
Okay.
Lynn does. I don't know what Salem's is, but I do know that they have. You know what sucks? Another pro tip is if you've been sexually assaulted, look at the first person you see in the ER and you say, "I am suicidal."
Okay.
Even if
Then
you're
you
not.
get treatment quicker.
Well, it'll get you seen quicker, and it'll get you seen by a mental health professional.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that
They
makes
are not
sense.
trained to sit in for the rape kit, and they often won't be allowed to. Like they'll come in after the rape kit is completed, but at the very least, you know that an advocate who has community resources in their little, you know, in their phone or in their binder at hand.
Great tip. Great tip. I'm glad you told me that because I can,
You know, and
share that as well.
just keep talking. Just keep talking. I don't know very many women at all who can say, you know what, I've never been in an uncomfortable sexual situation. Like I have always felt empowered. I have always felt safe. Like I don't know very many women who can say that.
No,
That
I
sucks
don't
sideways.
think I know any. I don't think I know any.
Well, that's the things I'm
that
trying to think. You know, I mean, other than like children, but even that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
my oldest daughter is gay and is out, and I know has had some, you know, men sitting too close to her on the subway, that kind of deal. So it starts small. And
Yeah.
my youngest daughter is adopted and has survived some significant trauma. They lived with a sex offender for a year and a half, she and her biological mother, before they came here. And so, like, I literally, from the youngest girl that I know well to older women, like, it gets to a point where if a woman says to me, you know, I've never been in an uncomfortable situation, I think you might be lying, or you might have just absorbed that this is okay.
Yes. That's the
So,
other thing.
Keep
Is
talking.
that, the more, when I was young, when I look back on some of the behaviors, stalking and, groping and like all kinds of behaviors that we just kind of laughed off, or just thought it was just what guys do. And now looking back at it as a much older woman, like, oh my God, those guys were total creeps.
Yeah, this is not okay. How is this okay?
It was never okay. It was never okay. I just didn't know better to know that it wasn't okay. Society was such that, boys will be boys kind of stuff. And we were just supposed to kind of bear it and try to keep ourselves, as much as safe as we could, considering, I was a child of the 70s and 80s. So how safe did we keep ourselves? But be kind of on the alert a little bit and kind of watch out for your friends a little bit. But other than that, I mean, men were just allowed to behave as badly as they wanted to. And that wasn't that long ago. It was totally taken for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And according to, some of the stuff that's going on in the media now, it seems like men are still behaving badly and women are just now starting to speak out.
I think, I believe that it's getting better because more and more often I can speak to a male friend or colleague or whatever. I can speak to somebody, even my husband sometimes, and I can point out, what you're doing could make someone uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Or I was uncomfortable in this situation, and have them go, I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
Like as a specific example, like I don't cope well with a man standing and speaking while I'm sitting. Like it sort of short circuits my brain, and it took me 35 years to figure it out, maybe 40. It took me a long time to wrap that through. Like, why was it that I could, lie in bed or sit in the car or sit face to face and have these perfectly coherent conversations with my husband, but then if I'm sitting on the couch and he's standing up, I would just, or perhaps less coherent than that. And I realized that there's just through my own background, and I think sociologically as well, like if he's standing over me, I immediately get intimidated.
Yeah.
And so if he literally just sits down, and he can perch, like he doesn't have to sit comfortable. He can just perch on the edge of the next chair or whatever. And suddenly I can feel like the cortisol drains out of my head and it's all good. And it's little things like that. Like and what sucks is not that it happens, but that I had to articulate it because I had to figure it out for myself and then be able to articulate it to him. And of course, happily, my husband is a very receptive and smart guy. And so now that we know that, he's really great about it. But to watch men in my acquaintance absorb that kind of information, and think like, I never thought of it that way. Or like if I'm in a room with only one door and the man stands in the door, I don't even think about it. Like, I don't think he's going to attack me in the least. And yet I get tense.
That's very interesting.
It's the little subtle things. Then, and then you consider things like, the latch on the subway, or whatever, the more deliberate nastiness. So it's wild. It's a lot,
It's a lot to change, but it can happen. It can.
How else are you going to change it? You identify it and keep talking about it. And
you educate and you don't tolerate it. As a culture, we cannot tolerate it. It's not good old boy stuff. It's not good for anyone but the old boy.
Right.
It's not acceptable. It's not appropriate. It's harmful, and it's a violation. And as it gets more extreme, it's illegal.
Yeah.
So
and and that whole like boys will be boys. No. You're saying assholes will be assholes. Like it's not okay. So I mean, I think we're doing the best we can right now. I know that places like End the Backlog, places like RAINN, RAINN.
Yeah.
Which
can I shout out a couple phone numbers?
Yeah, please. That's what I was going to say. Is RAINN is the
what's that an acronym?
I've lost what it stands for, and that's what I'm.
They have on the web too. It's they have RAINN.
So it's.
They're on the web.
But anyway, it's got a website where you can go and talk to people, about what are your rape, abuse, and incest national network. I couldn't get the incest part, but so there's a website as well as a phone number.
There's a phone number I have here. I think it's for RAINN because I have rape, abuse, and incest hotline.
RAINN has got rainn.org, RAINN.org, and this will go in the show notes. And the phone number I have is 800-656-4673.
Yep, that's what I have.
Hope.
So that's from RAINN.
That's from RAINN.
domestic violence hotline,
Mm-hmm.
which is another one, which is 800-799-7233. And then there's also Planned Parenthood is involved.
They're an
and
excellent
provide
resource.
support.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's 800-230-7526. So these are all great
Yeah,
resources.
and the
as well as-
backlog I will
and
put
the
in there.
backlog.com, because they have a bunch of resources on there, and you can also donate there. You can get involved politically to support the backlog. There's a bunch of stuff we can all do to like just cut the crap, country, and do what you
We
should
can
be
make it
doing.
better. We can make it better, and whether
We
it's
can make it
so if you need help or if you can help, there are ways to do it. So I'll put it in the show notes. Rhonda, thank you so much. This has been amazing. Do you have anything else that you want to say before I let you go? 'Cause I've had you on the phone forever.
Thank you. No, thank you so much, Kate, for sharing this dialogue and getting the word out, and any little bit we can do. Right, that's what we do. Just talk
That's
about
all we
it.
can do. It's all we can do.
Destigmatize it. We can destigmatize it, and we can move the dialogue forward in our own little way.
So keep talking, right? Keep talking. That's all we can do. And that has to be enough. And it matters and all of those things. I think one of the concepts that has stayed with me, even though I kind of knew it already, but I just hadn't really articulated it before talking to Rhonda, is this thing about being sort of Schrodinger's rapist, right? And I can't explain what Schrodinger's cat is with any degree of intelligence, but the bottom line is it's an uncertainty thing, an idea that you have a box and it's sealed and you can't see inside it, and so when you put the cat inside, it's alive, and you can't know whether it is alive or dead until you open the box again. So that is Schrodinger's cat. It is both alive and dead until you open the box again. Same goes for men walking down the street. You're Schrodinger's rapist. You are dangerous and are not at the same time. And I can't know the answer to just how dangerous you are until you've passed me and we've moved on. And I cannot afford to just sit in that uncertainty and be like, well, whatever. Like, I have to be on alert. I have to be careful. I don't wanna, because I don't wanna. For me, I don't wanna. But I also don't want to do that to you, because you guys out there, women out there, you people out there, most of you are not shitheads. But just enough are that I have to be careful and aware and alert. Because if I'm harmed, especially in a sexual way, I will be questioned. Did I see him coming? Did we make eye contact? Did I smile? What was I wearing? Was I on the phone at the time? Was I drunk? All of these things. And so I have to be on alert. Or I have to have a friend that is. I have to have a plan and a backup plan and probably a tertiary plan. It's a lot. And it's inherently necessary in a dangerous society right now. And that's shitty. And I don't know. I don't have an answer except we keep talking. Didn't you feel better before you knew that? So many thanks to Rhonda for a really great conversation. It was hard, it was scary, it was icky, but important. And we just got to keep talking. We just have to keep talking. Thank you guys for listening. I always appreciate you.
Music provided by Immunuri. Check them out at imunuri.com. Thanks for listening to Spaz on Mental Health. Tune into greeninkradio.com to listen to other great shows hosted by a collective of imperfect gurus. greeninkradio.com, an experience for the curious mind.